Thank you everyone for joining us today after we took a media break last week for the holiday. Like you, we're focused on the Continued Assistance for Unemployed Workers Act, which was signed into law late Sunday. We're relieved that the act, which extends many of the provisions of the CARES Act, was signed into law, keeping about 72,000 people from losing a critical safety net and offering additional assistance to other Oregonians in need. While we're glad that the 11-week extension of much-needed benefits has officially been enacted, the delayed signing of the bill, which was signed after the CARES Act expired, does mean there will be a delay in how quickly the U.S. Department of Labor will be able to issue guidance to Oregon and to all other states. We have not yet received any formal guidance, although we anticipate receiving some initial guidance this week and more to follow in the weeks to come. This may delay our ability to get some benefits out to Oregonians as quickly as we would like, but Oregonians will not be losing out on any weeks of benefits. And we know that any delay of benefit payments can be a hardship for the people and families relying on them to make ends meet. We want people to know that we will do everything we can to minimize any disruptions or delays in getting them the benefits they need. The Employment Department is better prepared today than we were at the start of the pandemic, when the CARES Act created several brand new programs that we had to program and train on. Today, we're prepared to quickly implement program changes into our systems, to share helpful and easy to understand information with Oregonians over social media, our websites, email, or emailed and mailed notices to claimants. And we're better prepared to respond to your questions and concerns. We know from our experience when the CARES Act was passed in the spring that federal guidance may come in piecemeal. We will share any new information with you and the public as it becomes available. So far, we know that the new legislation created lots of other changes in addition to the extensions in the new MEUC program. There are a few things about the relief package that we'd like to share today. The first is that the Department of Labor has confirmed that claimants will not lose a week of PUA, PEUC, or FPUC benefits as a result of the delayed signing of the Act. Once we're able to begin issuing payments, we will pay those benefits retroactively for eligible claimants who file, and they will receive up to the full 11 weeks of benefits that the legislation allows. Second, while we have not yet heard how the delayed signing may impact other parts of the bill, we do know that the FPUC, that's the Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation Program, will return for the time period between December 27th of 2020 and the week ending March 13, 2021. This time, this program will provide an additional $300 per week instead of the prior $600 per week that it had when it was first in effect. We also know there are many changes made to both the PUA and PEUC programs, including some limitations on backdating and additional requirements to deter fraud. This is one of the areas where we're waiting to receive additional federal guidance. Lastly, we know that federal funding for work-share benefits has been extended through March 13th, 2021. This means for employers that are already using or those that will start to use work-share, those benefits will not impact their future UI tax rates. And we're being very proactive with implementing these new programs. While we are waiting for the U.S. Department of Labor to issue written guidance, we are moving forward on a lot of related work so we can begin issuing payments as quickly as possible. We're analyzing the language in the bill, interpreting what the new rules may mean for how we process claims, strategizing on how we will prioritize IT projects, and we are already actively working on implementing the new programs. We have determined that we will implement the MEUC program. This is Mixed Earner Unemployment Compensation. It's a new program that provides an additional $100 per week to people who are receiving regular unemployment, and who also have documented self-employment income over $5,000. States have the option to choose whether or not to implement this new program. We and the governor agree that Oregon should do so. We will need significant guidance from the Department of Labor to move forward with the implementation of this brand new program, but for now, it is confirmed that Oregon will offer MEUC benefits. This program will be one of the more challenging ones of the newly enacted provisions for us to implement, and there are very significant unknowns about the federal parameters that we will have to follow. For one, the law requires verification of self-employment income for MEUC benefits, but we have not yet been told what type of verification is acceptable. We were just notified yesterday what the first week covered by this program can be. It's this week. All states have many unanswered questions about this new program. Once we get those answers, it will take extensive IT programming, training of our staff, and will involve significant manual processes. Until we get federal guidance on some of the changes we'll have to make and get further into starting the work, it's difficult to answer the question we know people are anxious about: when will the new benefits be paid? Because we know how important this is, we want to continue sharing the best information we have, even when we know it is still very tentative. Our hope is to start paying FPUC benefits. This is the additional $300 per week to people that are receiving other benefits next week. That's the first week that they are payable under the law. We also hope that people who are already receiving PUA benefits and still had several weeks remaining on their PUA claim will be able to continue receiving their benefits next week. This means that for most of the 72,000 people who face losing all benefits, it's possible they will be able to just continue receiving their benefits next week with no interruption. We do not yet have an estimate on when people who are nearing the end of their PUA claims or those filing new claims will be able to begin receiving their benefits, but as soon as we have that information, we will share it. The MEUC program, that additional $100 for mixed income or hybrid workers that I mentioned, will be exceptionally challenging to implement. We're committed to providing these benefits, but do not yet know when we'll be able to start making the payments. It may not be until March. We know that Oregonians have many questions and want to know what the new relief package means for them. Claimants do not need to call us with questions about the new federal benefit programs at this time, and should avoid doing so, as some people still need to get in touch with us by phone in order to receive their benefits. We will share information and updates about the federal package, including any instructions for people, as soon as new information emerges. We'll share information over social media, through email updates to our subscribers, including FAQs and chatbot on our website, and we'll continue sharing information with the press. In the meantime, we're strongly encouraging claimants to continue filing their weekly claims, regardless of which benefit program they're on. This is the most beneficial thing that people can do right now: keep filing their claims as they have been. The key things here are that people should continue to file their weekly claims, and that 72,000 people who faced a benefits cliff of having no benefits at all do have hope, and that for most of them, there may be no interruption at all in them receiving their weekly benefits. We are doing other work besides implementing these new federal programs. To allow flexibility for workshare participants, we're adopting a temporary rule that allows workshare participants to use any type of accrued paid leave other than vacation to bring their hour reduction within the required statutory 20 to 40% range of reduced hours. If an employee uses approved accrued leave during a week, those leave hours count as hours worked during the week. This is regardless of whether the reduction in hours was due to the person missing an opportunity for work for their employer. This temporary rule is effective December 27th of 2020 through June 25th, 2021. As the year comes to a close and we start looking ahead to tax season for individuals, we want to remind everyone that all unemployment insurance benefits, regardless of which benefit program, are considered taxable income. About 1/3 of all Oregonians who received unemployment benefits this year do not have federal or state taxes withheld on their claims. The rest, about 2/3, have either federal, state, or both federal and state taxes withheld from their unemployment checks. Everyone who received unemployment benefits in 2020 will receive a 1099-G tax form. This form states how much they received in unemployment benefits in 2020. They will receive that form in the mail by the end of January, and it will also be available to them online through the online claim systems. People do not need to call us to request a 1099-G. Our next unemployment insurance webinar is going to focus on the new federal unemployment benefits. Since our experts are busy analyzing and starting to implement these programs, and we have not yet received any formal guidance from the Department of Labor, we are pushing that webinar out until we have more information and more answers to share. The webinar is scheduled for next Thursday, January 7th at 1 p.m. Simultaneous interpretation of the webinar will be available in simplified Chinese, Russian, Vietnamese, and Spanish. To join that webinar, you can register online at unemployment.oregon.gov/webinars. And anybody who would like to watch a recording of the webinar can find it on our website and our social media channels shortly after the webinar is complete. I also wanted to provide some updates on some of the ongoing work that we've been talking about. One of these is regarding focused adjudication. As of September 30th, 2020, about 52,000 people had claims that needed adjudication, and we were working hard to resolve them. This week, of that 52,000, there are about 2,300 people with claims in adjudication. We are in the final week of this initiative, and we are working hard to get through these claims by the end of the week and to shift our focus to the remaining claims needing adjudication that were received from October 1st onward. Standing up all of these new and changed programs as a result of the recent federal legislation will not slow down this adjudication work. We've also been sharing updates about our progress paying people the waiting week. So far, we've paid about 418,000 people for their waiting week, totaling about $286 million. We originally had hoped to pay the vast majority of all eligible waiting week payments by the end of January 2021. We were able to do additional automation and work through many of these claims much quicker than originally anticipated, and updated our goal to get almost all of them paid by the end of December. As of November 30th, there were about 170,000 claims that needed to have a significant amount of manual work done to process them. As of today, that number is down to about 9,000. These are among the more complicated cases, but we're committed to getting them paid absolutely as quickly as we can. Since the pandemic really began impacting Oregon on March 15th through December 19th, the Oregon Employment Department has paid out about $6.5 billion in benefits. During that time period, we've had about 613,400 claims for regular unemployment benefits filed. We've paid about $472 million to over 90,000 people under the PUA program. We continue to see robust use of the Workshare program, with over 1,700 employers covering more than 67,000 workers through this program. In closing, I do want to thank you again for joining us today and for helping us get critical information out to Oregonians who we know are anxious to get as much information as possible about these changes. Our unemployment insurance, IT, and the rest of our teams will be working hard to implement the changes enacted by the federal legislation so we can continue serving Oregonians in need. We're very glad the safety net has not been taken away, and we'll continue to share information as it becomes available to us. Again, thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, David. Now I'm going to open the lines to the media to ask questions. Reminder, I will call on you in the order that you RSVP'd. Please limit yourself to one question and one follow-up. If you're joining us by phone, make sure to hit *6 to unmute yourself. So first up, we have Starla Pointer with the News Register McMinnville. Hi, is Starla Pointer on the line? Starla, if you're joining by phone, you might have to hit *6 a couple of times. Okay, we'll try Starla again. Next, we have Lindsay Nadrich with COIN.
Hi, David. I was hoping you could just explain what it takes to implement these federal payments, because I know the initial amount was $600, then it went down to $300, and it's staying at $300. So it seems like since it's the same amount, does that make it easier, or what does it take to roll these out to people? How complicated is it?
It really depends a lot on the particular program. The change that you mentioned is one of the more straightforward ones. It is a little more complicated than you said. The program that started out with the extra $600 only ever existed at an extra $600. There was actually a separate FEMA-operated program that we administered later for a period of time that did an additional $300. We do have to do some changing of the programming in our systems, and that is underway to both change the dollar amount that's going out from $600 to $300, to change the weeks that are impacted, and then to do some extensive testing to make sure that that doesn't cause unintended consequences. We also have to update a lot of our communications and, of course, train our staff on how this works. For some of these changes, we're able to do a lot of that now, even before we receive federal guidance. That extra $300 a week is one example. For some of the other changes that are made, like the new MEUC program, it really requires a fair amount of brand new coding, starting from scratch, creating the program. There are a lot of changes that we'll have to implement, new processes that we'll have to create, which is why that one, for instance, will take significantly longer.
And can you just be more specific about what guidance you're waiting for? And do you have any idea when that's going to come down?
Sure, I can give some examples. In terms of timing, we have had several conference calls with the U.S. Department of Labor. They anticipate getting some initial high-level guidance out this week, and then being able to provide additional guidance in the weeks to come. There are webinars scheduled for, I believe, next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, where we will get some additional oral informal guidance from the Department of Labor. I know that they are working as quickly as they can to create the guidance, get it through their approval channels, and then issue it to states. We don't know whether programs will just get initial guidance. Many of the CARES Act programs went through a similar cycle where we received some high-level guidance at the beginning and then received much more detailed guidance later. Some of those kind of follow-up, more detailed guidance documents were issued weeks or even months after the initial guidance. And in terms of the types of things that are covered, it really depends on the program. For MEUC, just as an example, where we know that there are the most open questions, the federal law requires that self-employment income be verified, but we haven't received the guidance saying what type of documentation that requires, or whether there is, how much flexibility there is for states to determine that themselves. We have not received anything talking about, for some programs, whether a separate application will be required or not, or how the programs interact with each other. Some of the changes made to PEUC, one of the extension programs, gives an opportunity for people to make some elections about what type of claim they're on. And that's a particularly intricate area where we need significant guidance on when people can make that election, the timing of that, and how it impacts all of their future benefits. So there are a ton of details that we really need to get the guidance on. These are federal programs that states administer on behalf of the federal government, so we're required to follow the guidance that they issue.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. And a couple of folks have sent messages over chat saying that you don't have questions, and that's very helpful. So if anybody else on the line knows that they won't be asking a question, you can just let me know over the chat and I won't call any. So next, I'm gonna hand it over to Jake Thomas with the Salem Reporter. We have Jake Thomas on the line. Okay, next, let's move on to Dick Hughes with the Hughesisms.
Thank you very much, and I am here. My first question is an issue of less than informative letters being mailed out has continued throughout this process. With these new programs and that you're doing in revisions and things, are you going to have a chance to change those? I don't know what you would call them, those inappropriate or unclear letters?
So some of those notices that get sent out are hard-coded into our mainframe, and it takes significant time to change those. And it's time that we don't want to pull our programmers away from working on getting the new benefit programs stood up so that we can get the money to people. We do know that there are some additional notice requirements in the federal law. That's another area where we don't have guidance on the specifics of what information the U.S. Department of Labor will require us to issue and at what point in time. For some things, we're also required to issue either just notices to people. In some other situations, we will be required to issue formal appealable documents. So it really will depend on what is ultimately required. If what's required is very similar to something that we already have built in our current systems, if it speeds up getting benefits to people more quickly, we will try to reuse what we have so that we're not causing any delay. If there are opportunities for us to be more clear or to create new things where we either have to or we can do it without a delay, that's certainly something that we want to do. We just don't know what those opportunities might be.
Thank you. And a semi-related follow-up question. We've heard from a number of employers and companies that their unemployment rates or tax rates are skyrocketing, even though the overall increase statewide may not be that much. Are you looking at going to the legislature for a change in how those rates are set or anything like that?
That's something that we're looking at very closely right now. We know a lot of businesses, a lot of legislators, the governor's office are all interested in what we can do to help businesses during this time. So we do anticipate having discussions and that it's pretty likely there will be some legislative proposals. We're doing analysis right now to see what some options are that might allow minimizing the impact on businesses, while also making sure that we don't run into the problem that over 20 states have already run into, which is completely running out of money in their trust fund. Then they have to borrow and pass on even more costs and taxes to their businesses. So we're looking at what we can do without creating a risk of having to basically bankrupt the trust fund and then add additional taxes to employers. We do think there's some opportunities, but we're still doing the analysis of how that could best be done without creating undue risk.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dick. Next, we have Bill Poehler with the Statesman Journal.
Yeah, hey David. So for the people who are on that edge, the 72,000 who were going to fall off the unemployment rolls. As far as the guidance from the department now, obviously you said they need to keep applying for benefits. Is there going to be any change in the way that they have to, though, based on what guidance you're going to get from the Department of Labor? Do they just keep doing it the exact same way they've been doing it for however many weeks they've been applying for it?
So for right now, they should just keep doing it exactly the same way. And for a number of people, it will continue to be exactly the same way. We do know that there will be some changes. We don't know exactly who will be impacted. We know that there will be some changes for people that are seeking the MEUC, the additional $100 per month for people that have both regular unemployment benefits, but also self-employment earnings. So we know that there are some additional requirements required under the federal law, but those haven't been spelled out yet. For the PUA program, there is also some requirement for people who are providing documentation about their income, seeking to have higher benefit amounts to provide additional documentation. So there are some increased documentation requirements contained in the federal law. We don't know what those are yet because they haven't been spelled out. And that's one area where, as we find out what they are, we will pass that information on as quickly as possible.
Okay. I guess with the MEUC, this is the first that I'd really heard about it. Can you give us like an example of who would qualify for that program?
Sure. I think that there have been some discussions, and we've certainly heard from a number of people. Sometimes they call themselves hybrid workers. That there are people who have a fair amount of income from self-employment. So maybe they're artists, maybe they have their own business, but they also at some point in the past year usually have done some type of work as a traditional employee. And the amount of employment that they had was enough to make them eligible for regular unemployment insurance benefits. Up until late last Sunday, if people could receive any unemployment benefits, we were required to pay them under the regular unemployment program, even if their weekly benefit amount would be much, much lower than what they would get under the PUA program if we were basing their benefits on their self-employment income. So the MEUC program is an attempt to at least partially address that by saying people who are getting regular unemployment benefits who have more than $5,000 of kind of documented self-employment income in the prior tax year can receive an extra $100 per week on top of the regular unemployment benefits that they're receiving.
Okay, that makes more sense. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Bill. Next, we have Rob Manning with OPB. Rob Manning on the line. Okay, next, let's try Betsy Hammond with Oregonian.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Thanks for taking my call. I am new covering this issue. Everybody who knows what they're doing is on vacation. So the alphabet soup confused me a little bit. So I'm going to say a couple of things and hope that if you'll correct any mistakes. So the biggest pot of Oregonians getting the benefit are people getting regular unemployment. And for those who are currently receiving it and still unemployed, if they apply, file for their week, they should expect to get the 300 starting next week and for 11 weeks. For the second largest group, which is the PUA, again, if they were getting it currently and they're, quote, not near the end, that's why I have a little bit of a question about, they could expect that also they won't fall off the cliff. It will continue next week. And only those who were, quote, about to run out are the ones who might find a delay. They'll get the money, but it wouldn't necessarily come next week. Can you just say a little bit more about the running out, and did I make any other mistakes? Thank you.
Betsy, you did a great job. What you said is accurate. I'll highlight just a couple things. One, the dates that I'm sharing are tentative because we are still actively doing the work right now, but we hope to begin making those extra $300 payments next week and to be able to continue the payments for those PUA people who are not right at the end of their claim. And nobody is going to fall off the cliff of those 72,000 that we were so concerned about. Most people will just continue getting their benefits next week, we anticipate. For some of them, it will take more time for us to get the benefits. And for that PUA group, the people who were near the end of their claim, currently PUA was paying people up to 46 weeks of benefits in Oregon. And for people who were not right at the end of that, and when we look at the numbers, it looks like it's a relatively small number of people, maybe approximately 1,500 that were close to that threshold. All the other people still had several weeks of PUA benefits available, but they were going to run out of benefits and not be able to collect them because the entire program expired. It is much easier for us to just continue paying them the benefits that we already had in the system as being set aside for them, essentially. So for those people, and we anticipate that is the large majority of the people on PUA, they should be able to keep claiming, and we hope that we'll be able to get the work done quickly enough that there won't be any interruption at all in them receiving their benefits. For the people that are right towards the end of those 46 weeks, it does require some additional work in our system to reflect the additional weeks of benefits that have now become available. So that's the work that we're doing. That's underway. We just aren't far enough in yet to know how long that may take because we're also doing a lot of the other programmatic work at the same time.
Betsy, did you have a follow-up?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Angelina Dixon with KBAL.
Hi, David. Just wondering, what's the status on our backlogs right now?
So we're continuing to make good progress on those. I shared with the adjudication work, which was one of the most challenging. We are making good progress. We have been trying to outdo the goals that we've set ourselves because we just want to get people their benefits, or if they're not eligible, tell them why absolutely as quickly as we can. We hope that we'll be able to get all of those focus adjudication claims resolved by the end of this month, which means by tomorrow. It will be close. We're working through the adjudication work now at the fastest pace the agency ever has when we look back at our historical records. So we're still not resolving things as quickly as we want to, but we're continuing to gain ground even as these new programs are being rolled out, and even as we've seen the increase in workload due to the resurgence of the COVID-19 and some of the further business restrictions as a result of that. So we're making good progress on that area. With the processing of claims, we also are making good progress. Really, the big challenges that we had been facing were adjudication and for the PUA program. And the PUA program is another area where, again, we're not as quick as we want, but we are continuing to get quicker and quicker each day. A few days ago, for the initial claims that were being filed, we're working on the ones from December. There are still some older claims that have other issues that we're focused on working through as quickly as we can. So I think from our perspective, we're certainly not at the finish line, and we're still racing as fast as we can to help people, but we're gaining good ground even as these new challenges and new programs kind of pop up for us to focus on.
Also, is there an estimated, I don't know, maybe wait time for those who are just now filing for benefits and don't have to wait for any adjudication process?
So it will depend on what program. If they're filing regular unemployment insurance and there's not an issue that needs to be adjudicated, most of those are being resolved within 1 to 2 weeks. There are, as we've talked about, issues that require more work where it may take longer. But that initial claim processing, where if there's not some other issue, people can begin receiving payments, we continue to be on top of that and maintain our good standing there with working through them quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Angelina. Next is Tom Cusack with Oregon Housing.
Hi, David. Can you hear me?
I can.
All right. I want to first commend you on posting what I've seen for the first time, the trust fund forecast summary for the coming years. I just noticed it on your web pages. My question relates to that, and my recollection is that the new legislation basically extends the period of full or partial federal funding for both work share and extended benefits. And I'm wondering whether or not those changes will cause you to have to modify the forecast that you've currently posted, or do you anticipate the impact will be so minor that it won't really change the direction of the forecast?
I don't think this will cause a big directional change. We do regularly review it, and certainly the creation of a number of new programs, the shifting of some of the costs, the things that you mentioned of how the work share benefits and the state share of extended benefits get handled are factors that we need to look at. I don't think we've seen anything that is likely to cause a big shift in that to throw us off of our generally quarterly schedule of looking at things. But certainly if we see a sign that it might be a more significant impact, we would do that.
Okay, another question I have relates to just the current status of who's receiving benefits. On your dashboard, we can see the number of claims that have been received. And of course, we know there's a difference between claims and actual receipt. But is there any kind of snapshot that you can give us as to the total number of people in a recent period of time, let's say the month or the week, that are actually receiving unemployment benefits here in Oregon?
I think we can. I don't have that data available, but we can certainly look and see if we can get a snapshot like that. That might be useful.
All right, thanks.
Tom, next we have Ellie Murphy with KBND News. We have Ellie Murphy on. Okay, next, let's take it to Peter Wong with Pamplin Media.
Hi, David. Two questions. MEUC. I'm preparing my own page on keeping track of all these acronyms, but one small one. You said it's $100 a week. You did say $100 a month at one point, but I think you meant $100 a week.
I apologize if I said per month. You're correct. It's $100 per week for 11 weeks that the program covers.
Okay, thanks. The other question is the origin of MEUC. Is this something Congress came up with, or was this something that you and your counterparts in other states suggested to policymakers in Congress as a gap filler of some sort?
I know that this is something that's been talked about among the states. I don't, and the issue that those people that had both self-employment and kind of normal unemployment insurance covered employment, the dilemma that they were facing, the situation they were in, that's certainly been a topic of discussion. I don't know that this was something that was formally recommended in any way. And certainly I think, especially looking at the more recent versions of legislation that we had been preparing for, it was a bit of a surprise to most states that this was in the bill that passed.
Okay, thanks. I know you, you've stated in the past, PUA claims have been difficult to begin with because of the earlier requirements in the CARE Act about regular unemployment being tapped first. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Peter. Next, we have Keaton Thomas with K2.
Hi, David. Thanks for taking the call. First, related to adjudication, there's a little over 2,000 left from focus adjudication. Do you have any idea of the number of claims in adjudication since October 1st?
I don't have that number in front of me. I know that the overall number of claims needing to be adjudicated has also continued to go down pretty significantly as we've been working through these. So we certainly have received newer ones in. Some of those have been straightforward enough ones that we've been able to resolve them. And we're going to, of course, be focused on all of those starting next week because those will be among the people that have been waiting the longest. But I don't have the numbers in front of me.
Okay. And just my only other point of clarification on some of the new programs is if someone's, I don't know how many people this would affect, but if someone's claim had expired and then they weren't receiving benefits maybe over the past few weeks, is that a significant number of people, and will it take time for them to be able to restart a claim under one of the new programs?
There's so many different scenarios now that people can be in. It's really hard to give one answer that would be accurate. For some people, their claim might have expired because they used up all of the money and they weren't eligible for other extensions. For some of them, the additional weeks of extensions might help them. For instance, if they had used up PEUC, were not eligible for extended benefits or pandemic unemployment assistance. Now that there are more weeks of PEUC available, that may help them, but that would be an area where we do have to do some programming and wait for additional guidance to know exactly how it would play out. So certainly some of those people will be helped. Unfortunately, it won't help absolutely everyone that was in those circumstances.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Keaton. I'm going to go back up to the top and see if we have Jake Thomas with Salem Reporter on the line. Okay, and what about Rob Manning with OPB? All right. Well, since we still have time, we had a request for a follow-up question. So Lindsay with Coin, you had something you wanted to clarify?
Yeah, David, could you just clarify for me, when you were explaining, you said you could start making payments next week, which is the first week people would be eligible. I think you said on PUA, but then people aren't going to miss out on a week of benefits. So I guess I was just wondering, since the program's expired December 26th, are people getting paid this week? So then next week they'll get that first payment and that's why there isn't a missed week of payments? Or I just want to make sure I heard that correctly. I just didn't know if you could clarify.
I will try. It's almost hard without pointing to a calendar because we're talking about different ways of looking at time frames, but I'll be as clear as I can be. Nobody is going to miss out on weeks of benefits as a result of when the bill was signed. So the CARES Act programs were able to pay benefits through the week ending December 26th, so through last week. Unemployment insurance is always a backwards looking program where after a week is passed where you are unemployed, you then seek benefits for that week. So people that filed for benefits when they filed their claim this week and received payment, they're getting their unemployment benefits that cover last week. The week that we're in now is the first week that the new benefit programs that were just signed into law Sunday cover. And the first week that people can seek to get those benefits is next week. And we will be paying those benefits. We anticipate paying the extra $300 and the PUA benefits for most people next week, that first week that the law would allow us to pay them.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. But hopefully that did clarify the sequencing and timing.
I think so. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Lindsay. And one more reporter, their mic wasn't working, so the question came in over chat. Katie with KOBI5 is wondering if there are any benefits for gig workers in the new year.
Sure, and there are, and it really depends on the specifics of what they were doing. There's been a lot of talk during the pandemic about gig workers and what benefit programs apply. And in terms of the legal distinctions, gig worker isn't a classification. So some of the people that we think of that do gig work, the work that they're doing really is covered by the regular unemployment insurance program. And we have a number of people that are already receiving and will continue to receive into the new year benefits under the regular unemployment insurance program or the extensions if they use those up. Some types of gig work is not covered by regular unemployment, and those people have been able to receive pandemic unemployment assistance. That's one of the programs that would have stopped, but because the new legislation, that will be available for them. So gig workers who are considered legally to be independent contractors may be able to collect PUA benefits in the coming year, and those who are considered to be employees under the law may be able to receive regular unemployment or any of the other extension programs.